It began with a sound, a simple, ordinary sound, the sound of a telephone ringing in an emergency dispatch center. The time was 10:42 p.m. On the other end of the line, a young man's voice was calm, almost unnervingly steady. He spoke as if describing a scene from a movie, distant and unreal. "There's a fight upstairs," he said. The words were clear, measured, devoid of the panic one would expect. He continued, "I think someone's been killed." The call lasted 37 seconds. A brief, cryptic message that would unravel into an impossible mystery. Police officers rushed to the address, a quiet residential building on a nondescript street. They expected chaos, prepared for shouting, sounds of a struggle, the aftermath of a violent confrontation. Instead, an eerie silence. The building was still in the late evening. Nothing seemed out of place. No noise from the apartment upstairs, no signs of disturbance. Like a phantom call, a figment of imagination. Officers proceeded with caution, senses on high alert, walking into an unsettling calm. They made their way to the apartment described. The door was unlocked. In the final room, a small home recording studio, they found it. A body. A young woman, clearly murdered. The impossible part? The apartment belonged to the man who dialed 911. The discovery shifted everything. The timeline no longer made sense. Call logged at 10:42 p.m. Coroner estimated time of death, about 10:49 p.m. 7 minutes after the call. How could someone report a murder before it happened? The question hung in the air, a stark, bewildering contradiction, a detail that defied explanation, turning the case into a paradox. The very foundation of the investigation was built on an impossibility, and every piece of evidence would be seen through the lens of this one central question. The 37-second recording became the heart of the mystery. Investigators listened to it over and over, searching for clues. The caller's voice was the primary focus. He sounded like a man describing a dream he was still living in, his words detached and strangely serene. There was no panic, no audible distress, no confusion in his tone. There was only a chilling sense of awareness, a quiet certainty that a life had just been extinguished. His name was Rami Hassan, a 26-year-old sound engineer. He was polite, quiet now. He was the only witness to a crime that, according to the clock, hadn't yet occurred when he picked up the phone.
Why would I kill someone and then call the police?
It was a logical question, one that made perfect sense on the surface. Yet, it did nothing to explain the timestamp. As the investigation deepened, the focus shifted from the words to the space between them. Days turned into a week, when a junior technician, working a late-night shift, fueled by caffeine and obsession, noticed something. He isolated a tiny fraction of a second, filtered out the frequency of Rami's voice, and amplified the residual sound. And then, he heard it. A breath. A soft, shallow exhalation, completely distinct from Rami's own breathing pattern. It was close. Frighteningly close to the microphone, as if someone were standing right beside Rami, their mouth just inches from his. The discovery of the second breath changed everything. Rami was no longer alone on the call. Someone was with him. The faint, airy sound turned him from a potential witness into a primary suspect. He was a participant. The forensics team went to work on the newly discovered sound. Their task was to identify the owner of that single, ghostly exhalation. Detectives returned to Rami's apartment. This time they weren't just looking for physical evidence, they were looking for audio clues. The breakthrough came when they analyzed the second breath. One specific microphone on his desk, a Neumann U87, was a perfect match. This meant he hadn't made the call on his phone's handset. He had routed it through his complex studio setup. The call was not just a call, it was a recording session. A potential witness became an undeniable suspect. He was not just in the room, he was controlling the audio environment, capturing the event as it unfolded. The answer came not from the breath itself, but from another piece of evidence found in Rami's studio. His computer hard drives. They were looking for a voice that could be connected to the victim, a young model named Anja Petrova. Deep within a folder labeled Client Demos, they found it. A clear, confident female voice filled the room. The detectives cross-referenced the voice. It was a perfect match. Anja Petrova had been in Rami Hassan's studio. She was not a stranger, she was a client. A connection he had failed to mention. They isolated her breaths and compared them to the short, shallow exhalation from the emergency call. The acoustic properties aligned. The digital ghost now had a name. The breath belonged to Anja Petrova. The pieces were now pointing to one inescapable conclusion. Rami Hassan was the killer. The only piece that still didn't fit was the timeline. Grainy footage showed Anja Petrova entering the building the evening of her death. She walked into his studio to record a demo. Detectives scrolled through hours of footage and found nothing. Anja Petrova was never seen leaving the building. She walked into Rami's apartment and never walked out.
Why, Rami? Why did you make the call? The evidence was overwhelming, a fortress of facts that left Rami Hassan with no logical escape.
For a long moment, Rami just stared. Then, something happened. His face, which had been a mask of placid detachment for weeks, began to crumble.
I called to escape from myself. Then, barely audible, he whispered his answer. I called, he breathed, to escape from myself.
Rami's whispered words transformed the investigation. The case moved from the homicide unit to the forensic psychology department. She proposed that Rami suffered from a severe dissociative disorder. When faced with a situation too horrific to process, the mind can essentially split in two. One part of the mind, the acting self, carries out the physical action. The other part, the observing self, watches from a distance, completely detached. Dr. Vance's theory prompted the audio forensics team to re-examine the 911 call one last time. They filtered out Rami's voice to listen to the almost imperceptible static behind it, pushing their equipment to its absolute limit. But then, buried deep within the static, they found something. The sound was unmistakable. It was a scream. The scream began in the fraction of a second between Rami saying the word "someone's" and the word "been." He wasn't describing a murder. He was narrating it, live. They brought Rami back to his own apartment. The lead detective then showed Rami a photograph.
The noise? She was laughing. I just wanted to stop the noise.
Months later, a judge declared him guilty but insane. He was not sent to prison. Instead, he was transferred to a high-security psychiatric facility. But the story didn't end there. Every night at exactly 10:42 p.m., Rami asks for his old headset. He presses play on an invisible machine and listens to the same 37-second recording, over and over. He wasn't reporting a crime. He was reporting himself.
There's a fight upstairs. I think someone's been killed.